My beloved child. Stop scrolling for a moment. Do not treat these words like another message passing across your screen, because something has shifted, and your spirit has already begun to sense it. You may not have evidence in your hands yet. You may not have received the call, witnessed the breakthrough, or seen the door move. But deep beneath the surface of your ordinary day, something extraordinary has just been activated in your life. Stay here. What you are about to hear was meant to reach you before the first visible sign appeared. There is a reason you have felt different lately. The silence around you has not sounded the same. Certain memories have returned without warning. Things that once mattered deeply have begun losing their power over you, while desires you tried to bury are rising again with unexpected strength. You wondered whether you were becoming restless, but that is not what is happening. Your soul is responding to movement that your eyes cannot yet see. Something long delayed has finally received permission to come forward, and the first revelation is closer than you imagine. You have been looking for a dramatic sign, yet the activation began quietly. It began when you stopped begging for what required you to abandon your dignity. It began when you chose peace over proving yourself. It began on the night you whispered, "God, I cannot carry this the same way anymore." You believed that prayer came from exhaustion. Heaven heard it as surrender. That surrender became a key, and the moment you released what you could no longer control, a door that had resisted every effort began to unlock. Do not rush away now, because the door is not the greatest part of this message. What is waiting behind it will explain why so many things had to remain closed before today. You thought you were being denied. You watched other people move ahead while your life appeared to remain in the same chapter. You congratulated them while quietly wondering when your own moment would arrive. Yet what looked like inactivity was a hidden process of alignment. Heaven was not overlooking you. Heaven was arranging what could not be rushed without damaging the blessing. You were never forgotten in the waiting season. Every time you thought nothing was changing, something within you was being strengthened. Your discernment was becoming sharper. Your heart was learning the difference between attention and genuine devotion. Your spirit was learning that urgency does not always mean destiny. You were being taught how to recognize what carries peace, because the opportunity approaching you will look exciting, but its deeper confirmation will be the calm it brings. That calm will be your first undeniable sign that the activation is real. There were things you would have accepted 1 year ago that you can no longer tolerate today. There were explanations you once chased that no longer interest you. There were people whose approval controlled your emotions, yet now their silence does not frighten you as it once did. You may have called this distance. Heaven calls it freedom. The first thing activated in your life was not a financial door, a relationship, or a public victory. It was your authority to stop abandoning yourself merely to keep temporary things from leaving. This is the first major revelation: the blessing did not begin outside you. It began within you. Something in your identity awakened, and because it awakened, everything connected to your future had to respond. Old patterns began losing access. Misaligned connections became uncomfortable. Familiar environments no longer felt like home. Even conversations you once enjoyed started leaving you drained. You wondered why everything seemed to be changing at once. It was because the version of you who could survive on crumbs was quietly disappearing. Pause here and feel the weight of this. You did not lose yourself during the difficult season. You were separated from the false version of yourself that believed suffering was the price of being loved. That belief kept you loyal to situations that were never loyal to your purpose. It made you call confusion a connection and call waiting without direction patience. But a sacred boundary has now been drawn. What enters your next chapter will have to honor the person you have become, not exploit the person you used to be. Something else happened when that boundary formed. A situation that had remained undecided began moving toward a conclusion. There is a conversation, opportunity, relationship, or personal calling that has existed in an unfinished state. You tried to understand why it never fully opened and never completely disappeared. The answer is being revealed now. It was held between seasons because neither you nor the circumstances surrounding it were ready to carry the truth. But the balance has changed, and what was suspended can no longer remain suspended. Someone connected to your story has recently confronted a truth they avoided for a long time. Your absence, your growth, or your refusal to continue the old pattern has forced them to look at themselves differently. This does not automatically mean you must reopen every door. It means that your obedience has produced movement beyond what you can observe. You kept asking whether your inner work mattered. It mattered so much that it interrupted a cycle involving more than just you. Stay with these words, because the next layer is where everything becomes deeply personal. You have carried a private question into many nights. Why did it have to take this long? You tried to trust, but part of you feared that the delay meant you had missed your chance. You wondered whether one wrong choice had placed you permanently behind. Hear this clearly within this fictional message of hope: your timeline was not destroyed. The road bent because it was protecting you from reaching a powerful destination with an unprepared heart. Had the blessing arrived when you first requested it, you might have confused access with ownership. You might have allowed fear to make your decisions. You might have held the gift so tightly that you could not enjoy it. You were asking for abundance while still believing every good thing would eventually leave. You were asking for love while still measuring your worth through another person's consistency. You were asking for visibility while secretly fearing judgment. The delay was not empty time. It was the space where your capacity grew. Now something big has activated because you are no longer asking from the same emotional position. You are not praying merely to escape discomfort. You are beginning to desire alignment. You no longer want a door just because it is open, you want the door that does not require you to betray your peace. That transformation changed the nature of your request. What once sounded like, "Give me anything," now sounds like, "Lead me toward what is right." Heaven can entrust far more to a heart that values alignment over appearance. The second major revelation is this: the delay was never proof that the promise was weak. The delay was evidence that the promise carried weight. Small things can arrive without preparation, but life-changing things require a foundation. You were being prepared to receive something without worshipping it, love someone without losing yourself, and rise without forgetting the nights that taught you compassion. The size of the preparation is revealing the size of what is approaching. That is why the pressure felt so unusual. Think about the moments when you almost gave up but could not explain why a small amount of hope remained. It was not always loud faith. Sometimes it was simply the strength to get out of bed. Sometimes it was one calm breath after a difficult conversation. Sometimes it was the decision not to send the message that would have pulled you back into an old cycle. Those moments appeared ordinary, yet they were turning points. Every quiet act of self-respect became another stone in the foundation beneath your next chapter. There is also a reason certain plans collapsed just when you thought they were secure. You saw the ending and assumed the entire effort had been wasted. But some structures were allowed to fall because they were built around a smaller understanding of who you were. You kept trying to repair rooms that your future had already outgrown. The collapse felt cruel because you could not see the larger design. Now, however, the empty space is becoming useful. Something new requires the room that disappointment created. Do not look away from this next truth. One of your greatest disappointments secretly redirected you toward the exact place where the coming activation could reach you. A refusal changed your path. A delay altered your timing. A separation made you unavailable for a choice that would have drained years from your life. What wounded you also moved you. You do not have to call the pain good, but you may soon recognize the protection hidden inside the change it caused. You have asked for confirmation, and the confirmation will not arrive as one isolated moment. It will come as a pattern. First, something you thought was finished will be mentioned again. Then an unexpected conversation will connect two details that seemed unrelated. After that, you will face a choice between the familiar response and the wiser response. The activation will become visible when you choose differently than you did before. That decision will prove that your internal season has truly changed. The choice may appear small. It may involve saying no without writing a long explanation. It may require answering calmly instead of reacting from fear. It may mean applying for something you once believed was beyond you. It may ask you to be honest about what you want rather than pretending not to care. Do not underestimate that moment. A seemingly minor decision will become the hinge between the chapter you survived and the chapter you are ready to enter. What is opening for you will not ask you to become fake, cold, or unrecognizable. It will ask you to become honest. You have spent too long minimizing your desires so other people would not feel challenged by your growth. You made yourself easier to understand by hiding the depth of what you carried. But the new season cannot be entered through self-erasure. Your authenticity is not an obstacle to the blessing. It is part of the key that will unlock it. The third major revelation has now arrived. A door connected to your authentic voice has been activated. This may express itself through work, creativity, service, leadership, communication, or a deeply honest relationship. For a long time, you believed your voice would create rejection. That fear taught you to speak in fragments and hope others would understand what you never clearly said. But something is changing. You will soon be placed in a moment where your honest words do not cause loss. They create alignment. That moment will heal more than the present situation. It will touch the version of you who learned to stay quiet to preserve peace. It will speak to the younger part of your heart that believed love could disappear if you had needs. You will realize that real peace is not created by silence alone. Sometimes peace begins with a truth spoken gently and received without punishment. When that happens, you may feel emotional without understanding why. The tears will come from recognizing safety where you expected resistance. Yet there is an even deeper movement unfolding. A prayer you stopped repeating has not been forgotten. You released it because repeating it began to hurt. You told yourself you no longer cared, but heaven understood that you were protecting your heart from disappointment. That prayer has remained alive in a form you could not recognize. While you were changing, the answer was changing too. It could not return in the shape you originally imagined because the original shape was too small for what you truly needed. You asked for one opportunity, but the answer required a new direction. You asked for one person's recognition, but the answer required you to recognize yourself. You asked for a single open door, but the answer involved moving you into a corridor filled with choices. This is why the response seemed absent. You kept watching one location while provision began gathering somewhere else. Soon, an unexpected connection will reveal how much was taking place beyond your view. Be careful not to reject the answer simply because it does not resemble the picture you created during your most desperate season. Desperation often asks for immediate relief, while wisdom prepares lasting restoration. What is moving toward you may feel unfamiliar at first because it will not carry the chaos you once associated with important moments. It will arrive with clarity. It will respect your time. It will not demand that you compete for basic consideration. The absence of confusion may initially feel strange, but that strangeness will be evidence of healing. You have been trained by uncertainty to expect every good beginning to contain a hidden ending. That expectation made you search for danger even inside peaceful moments. But the activation now occurring includes the restoration of your ability to receive. Receiving is not passive. It requires courage when you have survived disappointment. It asks you to remain present instead of mentally rehearsing loss. Your next blessing will teach you that gratitude and discernment can exist together. You can appreciate what comes without surrendering your wisdom. This is the fourth major revelation. The answer to your forgotten prayer is approaching through a route you never considered. It may come through someone who has no knowledge of your struggle. It may begin as a simple invitation, an ordinary message, or a thought that refuses to leave you. At first, you may not understand why it matters. Then one detail will be revealed, and you will recognize that the timing is too precise to dismiss within the world of this story. There will be a moment when you look back at this season and realize that several separate events were actually one unfolding response. The ending, the silence, the new idea, the unexpected meeting, and the return of your confidence were not random pieces. They were stages of the same transformation. You were not being moved from blessing to emptiness. You were being moved from limitation to capacity. The path felt disconnected only because you were standing too close to see its complete shape. Keep listening, because the activation is not only about receiving something new. It is also about recovering something that life convinced you to bury. There was once a brave, hopeful part of you who could imagine possibilities without immediately listing every reason they might fail. Experience did not destroy that part of you. It covered it with caution. Now that buried courage is beginning to breathe again. You may notice sudden ideas, renewed excitement, or a desire to revisit something meaningful. Do not dismiss those impulses too quickly. One of those returning ideas is connected to your future. It may appear unrealistic because you first received it during a very different phase of your life. You assumed the opportunity had passed, but the idea survived because its purpose was never tied to only one season. It waited while you gathered the maturity, knowledge, and resilience needed to carry it. What once felt like a dream may soon present itself as a practical decision. The transformation from dream to decision is one of the clearest signs that activation has occurred. You will not need to force every step. The next instruction will be specific enough for today, even if the full path remains hidden. You have often demanded the entire map before taking one step because uncertainty once hurt you. But this chapter will teach you a different form of trust. You will move through clear, manageable choices. Each act of courage will reveal the next piece. The mystery will not exist to torment you. It will keep you attentive to the wisdom developing inside you. There is another reason the full picture cannot be shown at once. If you saw every detail right now, you might try to control the order. You would rush the parts that need tenderness and delay the parts that demand courage. Instead, the revelation will arrive in layers. The first layer concerns your identity. The second concerns your voice. The third concerns the unexpected answer. But the fourth layer, the one beginning to emerge now, concerns a connection you believed had no role in your next chapter. This does not necessarily mean a former relationship is returning. The connection could be a person, place, skill, opportunity, or promise from your past. Something unfinished contains information you need, but not necessarily an invitation to live there again. That distinction matters. You may revisit an old memory only to recover the lesson hidden within it. You may hear from someone only to recognize how much you have changed. You may stand before an old door and realize you no longer need it to open. The fifth major revelation is this: closure itself is part of the activation. For years, you thought closure required someone else to explain what happened. You waited for their apology, confession, or acknowledgement. But the new clarity forming within you will not depend on their emotional readiness. A truth will settle inside your heart so firmly that unanswered questions lose their authority. You will no longer need every detail to know what the season taught you. That freedom will release energy you did not realize was trapped. When that energy returns, your life will begin moving faster, not because every circumstance instantly changes, but because you will stop circling the same internal question. The mind uses enormous strength trying to solve mysteries that another person's honesty created. Once you stop demanding an answer from a closed source, that strength becomes available for building. You will feel lighter, more focused, and unexpectedly creative. People may notice the difference before you find words for it. Someone will ask what changed, and you may be tempted to give a simple answer. But you will know the truth: you stopped waiting for permission to heal. You stopped treating your wound as a permanent address. You accepted that some chapters end without giving every explanation, and you discovered that peace can still enter. That decision will send a message through every area of your life. It will announce that the old cycle no longer has a place to land. Do not mistake this transformation for emotional coldness. Your heart is not closing. It is becoming selective about what it carries. You can remain compassionate without volunteering to be repeatedly wounded. You can forgive without restoring access. You can remember someone's humanity while accepting that they cannot accompany you into every season. This balance is sacred because it allows love to remain in your character without allowing pain to remain in control. Something extraordinary follows that balance. The moment you stop confusing love with endless access, healthier connections become easier to recognize. You notice who listens without turning everything into a competition. You notice who celebrates your progress without becoming distant. You notice who brings accountability without humiliation and affection without manipulation. These qualities may seem quiet compared with the intensity you once knew, but quiet does not mean weak. Sometimes the deepest security enters without spectacle.